Hi there, welcome to another episode of Our Smallholding. I'm just making the most of a second flush of mulberries on this mulberry tree that we have growing up in the woodland section. Our usual mulberry harvest would normally be September, October, just as the dry season is coming to an end and the rains are coming on. But for whatever reason this year, this one with these rains that we've been having lately has decided to have a second flush. So I have been making the most of it as much on a daily basis as I can, and I will freeze some of these for future use. I will look at making some into a compote right now, and even some of the best ones we will use in terms of fresh for dessert every night. But this is basically coming to an end now. I've been harvesting over the last week and a half to 2 weeks. The best berries are now finished. The rains that we've been having almost on a daily basis have effectively made a lot more of the remaining berries kind of mushy and stuff like that, not the greatest. So unfortunately the second flush is coming to an end. Just as our initial mango pick is coming to an end now as well. But we've had a great harvest of both. I will preserve what I can for future use. So let's go have a look at what else has been going on over the last week around the farm here. So here in the grassland garden, we've made a little bit of a movement towards weeding. Now, I don't do too much in the grassland garden here, but I do try and control some of the more noxious weeds. That would be things like blackjack, some of the spear grass species that if I didn't do anything here would eventually invade, overgrow, and then kind of ruin the appearance of it. It does look like a bit of a hurricane has hit those sections at the moment where we have weeded, and this will be an ongoing job over the next few weeks as we try and balance this and the vegetable gardens and the other areas altogether. But it was a good activity that we could get started on this week when it was too wet to dig in the gardens and things like that with that amounts of rain that we have been having. So we got to start on this. Hopefully in the next week or two we can get the rest of the areas done and then concentrate more on going through and allowing this to recover from the trampling that we have been doing over the last few days, and then possibly also targeting the last few weeds that we missed, or other weeds or other plants that don't necessarily go as well in this space. All right, well, the vegetables, some of them have been doing quite well with all the rains, others have taken a bit of beating, but here the Pak Choi has actually been very, very happy. The dry grass that I spread on it last week has done a fantastic job in keeping the weeds and things like that at bay for the most part, and has allowed these guys to grow fairly unimpeded. I expect give it another week or 2 weeks and I'll be able to start harvesting some of the larger ones, and we'll be able to leave some of the smaller ones until they have sized up. On the whole, I have not had much insect damage to these, fortunately. You know, knock on some wood if I had a bit of wood with me. That said, we do have quite a few things that would and do attack a lot of the green veg that we do grow here. But aside from a bit of slug damage, there's not too much to report on, thankfully. The spinach has not fared as well with the heavy rains. It has been battered quite a bit over the last week plus. We have quite a few spots on the leaves that are forming. The leaves themselves are not coming out as well as we'd hope. There's even a bit of powdery mildew that is starting on some of the leaves as well. What I'll end up doing is cutting a lot of these back, not fully to the ground, but I'll pull off most of the unsightly leaves, those that we're not going to eat. I'll save some in terms of chopping them up for things that I will then put into the dogs' food when I cook for the dogs, and the remainder will be thrown over to the goats for them to enjoy. So it's not going to go to waste, but unfortunately these spinach have taken quite a bit of a hit over the last several days with basically too much water. All right, the 7 years rape, which is actually a type of kale, has done fairly well with all this rain. If we hadn't tied them up, they would definitely be flopping over. They are getting quite large at this point in time, a little bit unruly, but they still can grow fairly well for the next several months. What we will do is we'll just continually harvest the newer leaves. These lower leaves are the ones that do have issues, again, with things like powdery mildew or insect damage. They'll be pulled off, that'll be thrown to the goats. But they have held up quite well despite all the rains, provided that they are tied up like this. Otherwise, with the wind, they would have toppled quite a bit ago. So we'll continue to harvest this during this season, and then as the rains finish, we'll look at taking some cuttings from these, rooting them, and getting a new batch growing to continue on. But otherwise, they're still in fairly good shape. So here we have Malabar spinach, or Brussels alba. This is again a leaf vegetable. It is a perennial, sometimes an acquired taste, but we got it from a friend several years ago and had it in the market garden in an area there for quite a while before we then kind of changed our plans on how that area was going to run. So we moved it, or I moved a piece of it here into the domestic vegetable garden. Here's an old fence gate that we had, and we have secured that into the fence here so that it can actually grow taller. So that might get up to about 2 meters in time, and it has sprouted very, very well, growing quite happily with all of this rain. I do sometimes come and just wind it in, especially those stems that are sprawling out from the main section of the plant. But I will give it a bit more time before we start to harvest the leaves, which surprisingly do taste quite a bit like spinach. So with the rains, we've also taken advantage to plant a number of mostly fruit trees, but on occasion some ornamentals as well, to hopefully try and make use of all of that water to get these established as much as possible. They have been added to various areas of the mixed orchard, and in some cases into the area that I'm wanting to develop into the food forest effectively. But here we have the black sapote, also known as the chocolate pudding fruit. I have never tasted this, but I really look forward to one day hopefully being able to taste the fruits on these. These are small plants at the moment, seedlings from the last few months. They have many years to grow, so we will do everything that we can to keep them happy and healthy. We dug a fairly decent sized hole for it. We mixed in organic matter in terms of pelletized compost, and what we will have to do is be constantly taking the weeds and things like that back away from these plants. But if that is successful, hopefully in a few years I'll be able to taste my very first chocolate pudding fruit and see if it actually does taste like chocolate pudding. I look forward to that. So one of the probably more important things we did in the nursery this week was we finally got around to installing the plastic over top of this bench. And we needed to do this to keep all of the rain off of things like the desert rose seedlings and some of the other more sensitive plants that I have growing at the moment that, with almost the daily rains, will definitely start to rot if we did not protect them in some form or another. So we got out, we put in the central beam down the center of it to create the ability to shed the water. We went through, we put in wire struts. Although initially we didn't put enough, I had to come back and redo them because after a heavy rain, water collected in between the wire struts, and thankfully it didn't break through, but it definitely had that potential too. So it is now reinforced. It has been tested over the last few days. It has not succumbed and buckled. So now we are good, at least for the remainder of this rainy season, to keep the plants underneath here nice and dry and safe. All right, it started to mist again, which isn't too bad comparatively to some of the rainfalls that we've been having this past week. The market garden is just continuing on as usual, still weeding, waiting for some of those ridges that we have prepared to die back down. The onion seed and the leek seed that I previously sowed has germinated and come up very well, so quite happy about that. It'll still be several weeks before they are ready to transplant, however, so in that time we'll just continue weeding and hopefully getting the little cherry tomatoes coming up strongly in the market garden. Other than that, there's not too much more to show for this week. The rain has been a bit of a hamper now and then in terms of getting as many things done as we'd like. The grass, the weeds, they've all been growing like stink. We're just trying to keep up, basically. So if that continues with the rain, we will be basically continuing on with weeding and, well, basically with weeding. Not too much more than that going on at the moment because of all the green growth, effectively. But we're going to leave it there for today. If you've liked this video, please hit the subscribe button, hit that like button, and if you feel so inclined, please leave a comment in the comment section, and we'll see you in the next one. Cheers.